Welcome to the chat. I'm Father Roderick, about to stream my weekly show a little bit earlier than normal, so we may have other visitors from different parts in the world, because normally I stream in the afternoon and we have a lot of visitors from the US, but I think most of them are still in bed. So instead, I hope to welcome some viewers from Europe and maybe even from Australia or New Zealand or Asia. Let me know if you're watching this, and you can post your comments or questions in the chat room, and I'll definitely at the end of the show get back to you and react to your comments or answer your questions. But feel welcome. As you can tell, there's a different setting here. Different camera setup as well. It looks really nice now with the blurry background. I'm still going to work on the colors in the background. So I have an idea about how to gradually improve the lights here in the studio. I watched a great tutorial on how to create a much better looking YouTube setup. I've changed the position of the desk at which I'm sitting. I think I finally know what I want to do and how to do it. So it's gonna look really cool. In the meantime, I want to welcome Adam and Chirk from the Lemon Trower gang, and Adam is there, and Bricks by Thomas is there, and Colecoco and Abram Lincoln from Phoenix. Aren't you supposed to be in bed? It's in the middle of the night over there. It's crazy. Anyway, glad to see you all. And I'm about to start the show because I've got a pretty busy day, and I only have half a day during which I have to do everything. Tomorrow, I'm leaving for Scotland. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the show itself. So I also need to arrange a lot of things to make that happen. I can tell from I've got a window. The Macintosh is right here outside of your screen, so I can see what you guys are seeing, and to me it looks good. The image looks good. It's sharp, blurry background. You see BB-8 there, and Therese of Lisieux, and the TARDIS, and Darth Vader. That's Darth Vader. He's very blurry, so you can't really tell. And these are cooking books that I parked there. I have to take them home, but haven't done that yet. But anyway, if you guys are ready, I'm ready. So let's record. Hey there, and welcome to my weekly show. I'm Father Roderick, and it is a nice Tuesday morning. And the reason that I'm recording this right now is that I am in the process of getting ready for a trip to Scotland and to Rome. I'll talk a little bit more about that in this show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And this episode, like everything I do, is made possible thanks to my patrons. Over at patreon.com/Father Roderick, there is a small but really enthusiastic community of people that through their monthly donations, sometimes it's $1 a month, sometimes it's $5. Some people have a little bit more to spend, so they sponsor me with a bit more. But they enable me to do this work, and they also help me to keep this completely advertisement free. And I'm super grateful for that, because there's nothing more irritating than advertisements when you just want to listen to the host and to the content, and you don't want to be bothered by food boxes or mattresses. Who cares? So thanks if you are a patron. I really appreciate it. And if you want to chip in and help out as well, go to patreon.com/Father Roderick. As a thank you, I will give you an extra podcast every week, and you get more information on how to listen to that podcast when you sign up as a patron.
Do you know what's going on? This is what's happening in your world.
They said Catholics rule. We got Boston, South America, the good part of Ireland, and we're making serious inroads in Mozambique, baby.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
All right, let's bring you up to speed as to what has been happening in my life. If you want to have a full report, you can listen to my other show, my other weekly show, which is called The Walk. And you can find that over at trideo.com. That's TRIDEO.com/The Walk. But in summary, I've been recovering from this complex infection, which was really crippling. Literally, I could barely walk. That's how much it hurt. The antibiotics are done, and I'm now in the transitional period where I officially, I still need to recover. My body is not entirely back to its original state. However, it's already going so much better. I don't have any fevers anymore. I just noticed that I'm tired a little bit more quickly, but I can still do most of my work, and hopefully this'll be it for this year. No more illness, please. And so I've made the decision yesterday to go on a trip. I was supposed to be in Spain right now. I was supposed to walk to Santiago de Compostela with a group of handicapped people in wheelchairs. That didn't go through. And then all of a sudden I had 2 weeks where I blocked out everything in my agenda. I was like, so what am I going to do? Because work goes on. I still have about 2 months to get ready for the next year. I'll try to work in advance for my TV work. And so I decided yesterday to go to Scotland. And I'm going tomorrow, which is very scary because I don't think I've ever, well, no, that's not true. I was about to say I've never planned something this short in advance, but that's not true because I've been going on trips to Rome on a whim. Just sometimes I would book a flight in the morning, and then in the evening I would walk around in Rome, and the day before I had no idea that I would be there. But I'm going to Rome and to Scotland. Rome is planned for next week, but for Wednesday I'm traveling with my cameraman Hugo. He's also going to direct me, and we're going to make a trip. We're taking the ferry, where we're going by boat, so that we can take a car with us, which makes it also much easier to go from one place to another, to carry along our equipment. Not to mention that we don't have to rent a car, which also saves a little bit of money. So going by ferry from a port near Amsterdam, we go to Newcastle. From Newcastle, we travel to Oban, which is in the west of Scotland. And then from Oban, we're going to visit an island where monks have lived. Because I'm going to try to figure out how these monks that came from the UK, from Scotland and from Ireland over to the Netherlands and to other countries in Europe, how did they do that? They were so successful, and yet they had no money, they had no followers, they came in a totally hostile environment, and yet they were able to evangelize huge parts of Europe. What was their secret? That's going to be the driving question of this tour of Scotland. And so from Oban in that area, we'll go back to Edinburgh. And in and around Edinburgh, there are also some places where these monks have lived. And, well, my director is going to, he knows Scotland very well, so he's got an idea on how to film that. We're going to do two travel episodes there. And I'll be back on Tuesday morning. I don't know in what state, because this may be very fatiguing. I don't know, maybe not. And then I hope to immediately go on to Rome, where it's the last week of the synod about the Amazon region. That in itself is not something I'm going to cover because I don't do news. But it is a time that many people are in Rome that I could interview. And so I'm hoping to do some portraits to film at least on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And maybe I can do what I did a couple of weeks ago in Rome, a couple of months ago already, where during the summertime I was able to film 4 episodes, 4 portraits, basically 4 interviews. And that was a lot of fun. It was fatiguing, but it's Rome. So it's always great to be in Rome, even though you have to work from morning till evening. So I hope to be able to do that. And then that would be bringing me to Rome a week earlier than I wanted to, which gives me another week to go out and film. So I don't know. It's going to be a very, very busy time, but it also means that maybe next week this show will come from Scotland because, well, I'll be in Scotland, so why not bring you along with me? So both the walk and this weekly show may be specials from Scotland, and I hope you enjoy that. I think you will enjoy that because, well, hey, you get to go on a virtual journey. It's all audio, of course. I don't think I'll be able to stream, although you never know. After all, Scotland right now is still part of the EU. You know, Brexit is approaching very, very quickly. But right now, I can still stream video from my phone for the same cost as here in the Netherlands, because it's all kind of the same. So yeah, maybe I'll even be able to stream the episode. Who knows? Stay tuned, stay subscribed, and if there's a new episode, it will pop up automatically in your podcatcher. And with that, it is time for our first segment of the show, and we need to talk about a TV show that I have discovered by accident on Netflix. I was actually not looking for it, but I saw a trailer, and I'm currently in the process of watching the first season, and oh, it's a gem. It is a gem. I wanted to review the Joker movie, because everybody has already seen it except for me, but I just didn't have time to go watch it because, well, I was ill.
How do you not like movies?
They're predictable. Like, the guy gets the girl and that kid sees dead people and Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Not liking movies is like not liking puppies.
They're fine. I just get bored and never make it to the end.
You know, you need a movie education. You need a movication. I'm gonna give it to you.
Actually, there are two things that I'm currently watching. One has to do with my trip to Scotland, because we're going to be in that same area where they filmed Hogwarts. And you know that large parts of the stuff on location that you see were filmed in Scotland and in England as well. And so we'll be actually quite near some of the places where they filmed for Harry Potter. But I won't have time to go and visit. But what I plan to do is, while I'm in Scotland, I already want to scout for my next trip to Scotland, where I do. One of my dreams, and I will talk about that a little bit later in the episode, is to go film a true documentary about Harry Potter and about the Christian influences of the Harry Potter story. We always hear negative stuff coming from Christians when Harry Potter is concerned. There's always these warnings of alarmed parents that there are actual spells in Harry Potter. If only. Goodness gracious. But no, they don't work. I can tell from experience, having read the books and all. But there's always this negative vibe about Harry Potter. And you know that I'm very much convinced that Harry Potter is in its core a very Christian story, very inspired by the gospel, and with a lot of Christian themes. And it's always been my dream to demonstrate that in a documentary. So that's one of my dreams for next year, to be able to do that. So, because I was kind of in the mood for Harry Potter, I've been rewatching the first part of the Deathly Hallows episode, which is incidentally filmed mostly outside. It's one of those few Harry Potter movies where most of the movie is filmed in real landscapes, and it's a gorgeous movie. It's kind of an awkward movie. It's the one that feels the least like traditional Harry Potter. Because there's nothing at Hogwarts. There are a few spells, but most of it is very, very almost accidental. There's not much happening in that movie. It's all about character development. This is all about this quest of the three friends, Harry, Hermione, and Ron, trying to find these fragments of the soul of Voldemort. Voldemort has divided his own soul in objects. And they need to destroy those objects before Voldemort can gather everything together and, become basically the equivalent of the Emperor in Star Wars. And so they are looking everywhere to find these objects that contain parts of the soul of Voldemort. And so this is very much a kind of a travel movie. I watched it on Blu-ray. And I realized that I'd never watched a Blu-ray. I've watched the movie when it came out in theaters, and I never watched it again. So now I'm watching an enhanced version. It's pretty cool what they did. So there is a version, an extended version, where every once in a while you will see commentary. So the directors, the actors, the special effects people, they'll interrupt the movie and they'll say, hey, you're watching this, but we actually worked on this for years, and this is how we kind of prepared this scene in the previous movies, and this is how we did it. Sometimes you can click on your remote control and get a full like mini documentary about certain aspects. And I have to say, it only enhances my admiration for what they've been able to pull off. And a lot of the, I think what makes that first part of the Deathly Hallows so special is the quality of the acting. And you can tell that this is the harvest of all these years where they've been working with the same crew, the same actors. They started off as kids, and they're friends, they're good friends. And that is what gives these scenes so much pertinence, because you can tell that they've grown so much and they know each other so well that just is visible in the way they portray their characters on screen. So really interesting, kind of an oddball movie. And if you look at the entirety of the episodes, and the second Deathly Hallow movie is very different, where it's all about the battle and it's full of special effects. And this movie is almost like, wow, is this Harry Potter? It looks like, I know these kids, but this is basically one big advertisement for Scotland. That's how beautiful it is. Very gloomy also, very, very almost a bit meditative, but really, really good. So that was the first thing that I've been watching. Now this series that I want to recommend to you is on Netflix, and it's called Raising Dion. And it is a superhero series, but nothing like what you would expect. The superhero movies, be it Marvel or DC, they all focus on adult characters. And it's almost always starts with an origin story where someone is in a dire situation, discovers that they've been graced with superpowers through radiation, through spider bite. Well, you know the drill. And then there is usually a supervillain that they have to confront, and that's basically the third act is how they manage to overcome this evil creature. Raising Dion is none of that. It is about a mother trying to raise Dion, a little kid, 8 years old. In reality also, the actor is 8 years old. And the father has just recently died trying to save someone in a freak storm. And at the beginning is just, you see the struggles of this mother with this very cheerful kid, super, really a kid. And it's, the acting blows me away. This kid, Dion, is playing so believable. I mean, you don't believe that this is actually an actor. That's how well this is played. This is maybe one of the best kids actors that I've ever seen. And what happens in the first episode is that the mother discovers that this child has very strange superpowers. He is like, and they discover it by accident. The kid is eating his morning cereal. So it's all happening in a very recognizable situation. The mother has just been fired. And of course, she has got great concerns. The kid also has asthma, so his medication is expensive. And because she's fired, now all of a sudden there's also a financial problem, because these inhalers are, if you're not insured, are like $70, $80 a piece. And of course, the kid just needs that. And so it also shows you kind of the reality of the situation in the U.S., where you don't have that universal health care that we enjoy over here in Europe in most countries. And you see what all of a sudden this is a major problem. And so there's this stressful situation at home. The kid is eating his morning cereal, and then he needs to go to school, but he's 8 years old, so he doesn't want to, and he keeps procrastinating. And then the moment he needs to rush to put his shoes on, the bowl of cereal flips into the air. He knocks it over, and then the kid turns around, and all the pieces of cereal and the milk is floating in midair, almost completely frozen in time. And then and then his mother comes in, and everything falls to the ground. And that's the first time that we see that this kid has a very strange superpower. And at first, the mom does not realize that that's going on, but she discovers that in a second incident, and then she's like, nobody believes her. She has a sister who is trying to help her. And of course, the sister thinks that she's losing it. And the mother too is a great actress. And then bit by bit, they start to build the mythology of that first season. There's more going on. The father didn't die as a result of a tragic, failed attempt to save someone. There's much more going on there, and so. But what makes this so relatable is how well it's acted. And I was like, this must have been written by women. I just had a feeling this is written by mothers who know what it is to raise an 8-year-old. And then I look at the credits, and lo and behold, the writer is a woman, the director is a woman, the producer is a woman, this is not like to do something politically correct, but you can tell from the story that this is written from the perspective of mothers, and that is what makes it work. I don't think that a man could write a story like this, and it is so heartwarming. I was like, there were really moments every episode. I'm just looking at that, and I'm thinking, this is the most charming, most relatable, most normal superhero story that I've ever seen. But the kid steals the show, and you care for the characters, not because of the superpowers, but because they're so relatable. This could be family, This is something that any parent with kids can understand and can relate to. And ultimately, it's not even about the superpowers and the mythology of what's going on. And of course, there is a threat that this kid needs to somehow solve. And so this little kid is like a kind of an archetype of little Jesus, He's way too young, and yet he needs to save the universe. Or Anakin Skywalker, young Anakin in the first movie, in the Phantom Menace. Same thing. His mother starts to realize that this kid has a calling, and he's supposed to become the savior of the universe, and she's just super worried and doesn't know how to handle that as a mom. So there are definitely some typical hero story archetypes here at work, but it's done in it's written in such a great way. And ultimately, the problem is not that this kid has superpowers. No, the problem is, how do you raise a kid? Basically all kids have superpowers. They all, you can never really manage kids. What you do as a parent is you adapt, and your kid has the gifts that it has. And you're only partially responsible for that. But most of what makes the life of a parent so challenging is that your kid is another human being. It's not a robot. You can program. Kids do unexpected things. They have unexpected. They may have disabilities. They may have a certain temperament. You may have a kid that has autism or is on the autism spectrum. None of that you can foresee as a parent. So what you do is you try to manage it as well as you can, and you often fail because kids are kids. That is what the series is about. So in a way, the superpowers that this kid has are just a metaphor, I think, of what makes your kid so unique and sometimes difficult to handle. So go watch it. It's called Raising Dion. I've watched about 4 episodes now, and it is amazing. And there are also, for the geeks in there are some really, really cool little hints and little, what you call them? Little references to, for instance, to Stranger Things. There are some really overt references to Stranger Things, and there is actually a lot of the vibe of of the mythology feels a bit like what they do in Stranger Things as well. And I think it's a really, I've almost seen no reviews of this. I don't see much chatter on social media about this series, but I will say, well, let me just start this because it is really, really worth your while. So go check that out. It's called Raising Dion, and it's on Netflix.
Catholics rock!
Here as a peculiar ones, we're always happy to tell you everything you always wanted to know about Catholics, but you are afraid to ask.
Catholic This could be a peculiar bunch. No meat on Friday.
Oh, meat? What do they eat? Light bulbs?
And today I want to discuss two types of attitudes that I see among the faithful, the people that believe in God and try to follow Jesus.
Man, you guys got more crazy rules than Blockbuster Video.
In my timeline on social media, on Facebook, that's basically where I hang out most of the time, I see two types of people. And it's a bit schematic, of course. No one is black or white. We're all gray. But you see two types of behaviors that result in very, very different types of posts, discussions, and everything. On the one hand, you have the people that are often complaining, or they're worried, or they're angry, and they post about presidents that they can't stand. They post about popes they don't really tolerate that much, or that they worry are going to destroy the church. They post about bishops that are, either their heroes or their mortal enemies. And when these people react, it's often they jump into the debate, and they're extremely concerned about the situation in the world. They really want to fix things. They want to fix the world because it's broken. It's so broken, and I'm so worried about that. It's broken, and and everybody needs to know that it's broken, and we need to fix it. There's a lot of tension in those people and in their behavior. There's a lot of restlessness. There's a lot of worries, a lot of pain also, and stress. And then I have another type of people that I see that fills my timeline. These are the people that share stuff that makes them happy, things that make them cheerful and it makes them laugh. Like I have a number of people that sometimes post if they find these amazing little videos of toddlers wreaking havoc, or puppies that are just making you smile and weep at the same time because it's just cuteness overload. There are people that share things that are happening in their own neighborhood or in their parish, where they've been organizing things, and there's youth camp, and you don't see that much worry there. Of course, these are people just like you and me. They're watching the news. They may be praying for the things that worries them, but it's almost as if the things that worry them only motivate them to seek the positive side and to post about that and to share not just what's going wrong, but mostly what gives us energy, what gives me joy in life, what gives me hope. And I think both are addictive. You can get addicted to negativity, to worries. You can get addicted to outrage. It's fueling our political debate. It's fueling our online conversations, and it kind of feels good to be to have indignation, to be able to criticize. Have you seen what that dude or person or and it makes us, in a certain way, it's a little bit of the reward is I can point at someone so I don't have to look in the mirror. It makes me feel good because at least I would, if I were president, if I were pope, if I were bishop, if I were a priest, I would make things work. I would do it totally differently if only people would listen to me. So, there is a desire there, I think, for the world to be right. Absolutely. And so I don't want to be too negative about that people. Although I wonder if the addiction to outrage and indignation, if that's truly going to help you or if it's going to help the world. I kind of doubt it. It sometimes depresses me. I have this filter on Facebook, and it's called, I think, the Fluff, something with Fluff. Let me look that up here. It's an extension that I've installed in my Chrome browser. that works together with Facebook. Facebook, of course, sometimes its algorithm thrives on indignation and on angry faces and on controversy, because that's what riles up people, and they start debating, and it's interaction. But I have the extension's called Facebook Purity, and it's the fluff busting. Let me look up the page of this extension. You should try it out. Fluff busting purity, because they can't really use Facebook in their title because copyright probably. So, but it's called FB Purity. But FB stands also for Facebook Purity. What that does is it allows you to filter certain words. So when in 2016 the elections were going on, and there was so much controversy on Facebook, and there was so much strife and warfare between, I want to vote for this candidate, I want to vote for that, and if you vote for that person, and you're evil, and I just entered a whole lot of words that if the extension notices that word, I won't see that post. And all of a sudden, my Facebook environments turned into serenity and positive, filled with puppies and cakes and recipes and geek stuff. And it was great. I was like, all of a sudden Facebook turned into a place where I wanted to hang out. And instead of getting depressed by Facebook, it just gave me energy, and it made me happy, because what remained were basically the people that may worry just as much as you and I about the world in which we live. But they were trying to kind of counteract it, to medicate, or maybe even self-medicate, and that too can become an addiction, with funny stuff, with things that make you happy, inspiring things. There are a lot of inspiring quotes and videos that popped up, and the risk of that is, if you're only posting puppies, that makes you feel good, but does it really help the world? Does it really change anything? Maybe not. I mean, you can get addicted to puppies because you just want to, you just want to self-medicate. You want to insulate yourself to the negativity. And understand me, there's nothing wrong with puppies in your feed or kittens or anything. That's great, and cakes and whatnot. But I think what we need to seek is the middle ground. What is the attitude behind our behavior? What are we afraid of? Or what are we trying to hide from? And if we understand that, if we go to the core of that, and how do we relate to the world around us, that is what is going to keep us balanced and will help us to share what really helps other people. And for me, the key word in this is gratitude. Gratitude is a very important Christian concept. The Greek word Eucharistia that we use for the Eucharist, for Mass in the Catholic tradition, it means giving thanks. And it is not by accident that Jesus puts that in the center of our Christian lives. During the Last Supper, when he shares the bread and says, "This is my body," and at the end of the meal, or after the meal, he shares a cup of wine and says, "This is my blood," he adds to that, "Do this in memory of me." And he even makes sure that his disciples do that by, after the resurrection, finding them on their way to Emmaus. And he does it with them. He breaks the bread and he shares the cup. And at that moment they realize, this is Jesus who told us, "Do this in memory of me." That is the scriptural foundation of our Sunday practice in the Catholic Church of celebrating the Eucharist. It is this, apparently Jesus wanted us to always remember him with a thankful heart and to express our gratitude to God, to his Father. And that attitude of gratefulness, I think, is perhaps the best remedy against hopelessness or against self-medicating. Let's numb ourselves with puppies and cakes and and food, or worse, right now, painkillers. You know, this whole crisis that we have in the Western world where people self-medicate and get addicted to alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, marijuana, or painkillers. All of that, I think, is a reaction to the world around us that is so threatening, that is so painful, the things that we don't want to have in our lives. But of course, it's never the solution. What really helps us is to change our fundamental attitude in life, and gratitude. I think Thanksgiving. We're getting closer to Thanksgiving. We're approaching the months of the November, December. Giving thanks is doing a number of things. It makes you realize that no matter what goes wrong in the world, what goes wrong in your life, in politics, there's also always something to be thankful about. God never stops giving. And especially in the darkest times in history, God has been giving us gifts to strengthen us, to make us realize that he's still there at our side. And that if we have to go through darkness, he will be there right at our side. Look at all these stories about the years in the desert with Moses and his people. In the most difficult moments, God provides. He gives them food. The manna that they find in the morning, that helps them to bake bread. The birds that fall from the sky, literally, that they can cook or roast. The water that flows from the rock, where Moses, kicks the rock with his staff, and then there is a source of water. Constantly, God gives these little signs of his presence, and that has not stopped. That is also true in our lives, and that is both comforting, maybe even more than puppies, because the virtual puppies that we post, they're not our puppies. They're just there for 2 minutes, and then we can click on the next puppy. But it's ultimately not a solution. But if we realize, if we train ourselves to look at the gifts that we receive, the things that we take for granted, but actually are not ours, like our health. That's one of the things that I learned when I fell ill in the past few weeks. It's like you take that for granted, that you can run marathons and that you can work and go on trips and go to Rome. But if you're in bed with almost 40 degrees Celsius fever, and you're crippled and you can't barely walk because of the infection in your lower body, that's when you realize, well, wait a minute, health is a gift, and it's a gift that I need right now. And I've been praying, like, God, please make me healthy again. And now, 2 weeks later, and thanks to the doctors, of course, I wasn't cured by a miracle, but definitely, I still see that even if I'm helped by a doctor, and a doctor, the prescription made me healthy, it's still a gift. It's still something that I'm grateful for. And so this past Sunday, I celebrated Mass out of my intention there was to say thank you that I'm on my feet again, that I can celebrate this Mass. And I really, when I was still in bed, I realized I need to be so much more grateful for the days that I am healthy and that I'm able to do all this stuff. Instead of complaining about everything that goes wrong or complaining about the stress, why not say thank you that I can do this? Thank you that I can be in stress about good things that I'm doing. I also realized that when I was visiting my dad last Sunday, I talk about this on the walk as well, where I've been praying before my father was operated upon and had surgery. I was praying that he could keep his leg and that he would, not be as confused as he was again. And I even went to Lourdes and I prayed there and I lit a candle and I asked Mary for her protection and for her help from my parents. And my father did lose his leg and he got into this delirium. And now he's in a home in a closed section there, and he needs to get permanent care because, well, dementia has not gone away. It's only getting worse. And so I could choose if I was constantly, in this negative mood of worrying, of complaining about the things that go wrong. I have plenty of reasons to do that. And everybody would understand. Yeah, of course you're depressed because your dad and this and that. But then I was visiting my dad on Sunday, and I saw how cheerful he is, how much he enjoyed that I was coming along, and we had a cup of coffee, and there was cake, and the cake was good. It was homemade cake there by one of the nurses, and it was great cake. And he was just cracking jokes. He was having a good time. I took a picture of him. And that is my dad. That is the best version of my dad. That's how I remember my dad from when I was young. It's always, my dad is a funny guy, and he liked to joke, and he liked to laugh. And he never watched television except for one thing: French comedies. And just Sunday, he reminded us that one of his favorite movies was made by Jacques Tati, who is a genius filmmaker, a comedy filmmaker in France, who made these black and white, kind of almost absurdist movies, where just things would just constantly go wrong, but it was filmed with this kind of tongue-in-cheek type of humor, very slow, very. I'm not sure if that would work in any culture, but my father would just. I remember him. He would get these fits of laughing, and he wouldn't stop laughing. And then later on, he became a fan of all the gendarmerie movies with Louis de Funès. He's also a great comedian, a French comedian, who actually resembled my dad quite a bit. My father could also be this constantly super stressful, and if one thing goes, if it rains, it pours. That's kind of the. But then my father, when he saw those stressful situations with Louis de Funès and those comedic French movies, it would make him laugh so much. And that's how I remember my dad, as someone who was he could be very strict, and he could be he wasn't always smiling, but he could laugh, and he loved to joke. And it's almost as if that father, thanks to everything that happened, even thanks to the dementia, that father is emerging again. And because he doesn't follow the news anymore, and he's not always aware of what's going on, it's almost as if there are not that many reasons to worry. Of course, he still is sometimes in a difficult situation, and there are fellow patients that can cause a lot of uproar. He has his own medical issues, and he's sometimes confused. But when he's in let's say when things are tough, it's just in that moment. And once the problem is gone, it's also gone from his memory, and he becomes his cheerful self. And so a lot of people have commented on that photo that I posted it on Facebook, and they say that he's got this great smile. And that you don't have that smile from a stranger. That is your smile as well. And I realized that. And I was like, and that, again, being with my dad made me realize how grateful I am that I am my father's son. And that one of the things that I inherited from him is his smile and his sense of humor and his love for comedy. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm such a privileged guy that I have a father like that. And maybe when I am his age and I'm old and I start to lose my senses, I hope that what remains is my smile and is my sense of humor, because that makes a lot of things bearable. And so it's this feeling of gratitude. I won't say optimism, because that can also be naivete, but it's this sense of like life is never just bleak. My country is never just evil. That's maybe one of the reasons that I've still not seen the Joker movie, because I've heard from most people that's seen it, it's like, yeah, it's very well played and it's very well acted, but man, I was depressed when I left the movie theater. Right now, I need positive things that warm my heart, that help me smile, and that's why I was talking about Raising Dion, because that's a series that I watch it and I have a smile on my face. It's like, oh, I love this. This is really so heartwarming to see these people. And they too have their struggles, but there's always this hope. That's what I love about superhero stories. It's all about hope. And that's maybe why I've never been a fan of the kind of the darker Marvel stuff. Because of Batman, I cannot stand his guts. I would not be friends with Batman, I can assure you. I was like, come on, cheer up, man. Why wear that dark mask? And it's also dark. Look at the bright side. Come on, you're rich. You can do all these cool stunts. Come on, cheer up. And the Joker is even worse. Anyway, so but that's just me. But I've noticed that that having this attitude of gratitude helps me to also be balanced in the things that I post. I could have posted a picture of my dad in a wheelchair, looking sad, and then basically ask for prayers because, oh, it's so tough. But I instead opted to post a picture of my dad smiling, because that is, I think, who he truly is. And I've noticed that smile helps other people to also smile. If my dad can smile even though he's lost his mind, kind of almost, well, he's in a state of dementia and he's lost his leg and he's got a lot of other physical handicaps. If my dad can smile, then I can too, and you may be able to smile as well. All right, that's it for today. Let's talk about books.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night. The packet. The extraction theory papers. Am I the only one who did the reading?
I finished the autobiography by Louis Theroux. Learned a lot from it. Really inspired me in my own work as a program maker. And I've started to read another autobiography by another filmmaker, writer, comic book writer that I greatly admire, and that is Michael Straczynski. Michael Straczynski is, for me, the hero because he wrote Babylon 5, which is the greatest science fiction series ever made. And he has been one of the few science fiction writers for TV that has been able to completely finish his project, his Babylon 5 project. He wrote everything in advance. He wrote almost every episode except for a few people, I think, that he asked to write one particular episode. But he was able to completely finish that story arc. And I'm currently also watching Deep Space Nine. And Deep Space Nine really, I think, inherited the legacy of Babylon 5. This overarching mythology that was in Babylon 5 has been, I think, a main inspiration for Deep Space Nine. And there are very huge similarities between the two series. So if you like Deep Space Nine, if you never checked out Babylon 5, go watch Babylon 5. You will not regret it. And actually, I think that Babylon 5 is much denser, much richer in its writing than Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine still has to kind of work with the parameters of Star Trek. You can't have too much conflict. It's always have to be this this utopian this drive. You know, it's all going to be okay because this is Star Trek, and we need to wrap up the tension as soon as we can. In Babylon 5, there's much more drama. It goes much deeper, and there is even an online commentary that Michael Straczynski has contributed to tremendously. I think it's kind of the Babylon 5 archives or something like that. And it is almost a scene-by-scene written commentary on every episode of all those seasons of Babylon 5, explaining how scenes were written, what is going on, what is the symbolism of stuff. And it is so incredibly rich. And just doing that, watching Babylon 5 and reading per episode that commentary, I mean, I just cannot believe the quality of writing that Michael Straczynski did with Babylon 5. Later on, he wrote Sense8, which was this kind of strange, almost experimental series on Netflix, which was directed by the Wachowskis. So the two originally brothers, now sisters, because they changed their physiognomy. Let's put it that way. So they wrote this very progressive series, which I admired because of the writing, but I hated because of the explicit scenes in there, both of violence and nudity. But one thing I have to give that series, it was very well constructed, and it was brilliantly written. I just don't like it's just a little bit too much. Oh, actually, it is just too much for me and for a lot of other people. That series got canceled. But Michael Straczynski has also written a lot for I think for Marvel. A lot of the great series that have also inspired the Marvel movies and the MCU that we currently enjoy were inspired by Straczynski and written by Straczynski. He's just recently released his autobiography, Becoming Superman. And that's about him. He literally applies that to himself. He's written also Superman stories, but he sees himself as someone who actually became a superhero almost. And so the entire book is written as an origin story, and it's not pretentious at all. In fact, it is almost, you could say, almost a public confession of his hidden past and the tragedy that is underlying his work as a writer, and also determines how he writes and why his writing always touches upon these very, very strong emotions and the most fundamental themes in life. Straczynski is not a believer. He's not a Christian. I think he's more agnostic than an atheist, and yet it is one of the science fiction writers that has written the most impactful episodes about religion that I have ever seen, both in Babylon 5 and also in other stuff that he wrote. It's someone who, I would say, through the tragedies in his life, has touched upon what truly determines our human existence. What truly counts in life? It brought him on the brink of the fringes of our existence. What keeps us human and what not, and what threatens our humanity? And that is why I'm reading this book with so much interest, because you start to understand where he comes from, and it's unbelievable. Michael was killed almost twice by his own mother. He was conceived in a brothel. His father was a horrible abuser. His mother was raising Michael in the most extreme stress that you can imagine. And yet he lived to tell the story, and it's a story of hardship, but also of growth and discovery in hardship. It's almost as if the tragedies in his life made him what he is right now, a very successful, one of the best science fiction writers out there for TV and movies, and someone who is shockingly honest in his autobiography. It is very well written as well. I'm listening to the audiobook, thanks to this Storytel service that I subscribe to. It's not read by himself. It's read by a good friend of him, but does a great job. And it is just fascinating. It's kind of hard to listen to, especially the first few chapters about his youth. Man, you kind of feel for him, and it's, this could be a really dramatic movie. You think that a Joker is full of drama? Well, just read this book. But then the story is going towards this strength that he finds in the middle of the stress, and how he also obviously talks about his experiences while writing Babylon 5 and working in the movie industry, and there is a lot of struggle, but also a lot of unbelievably great moments and insights. And I can't wait to finish the book and do a full review, also a thematic review about the things that that touched me. But right now, I just want to recommend it to you already. Becoming Superman, and if you want to get a gist of the contents of the book before reading it or before purchasing it, just Google it in YouTube. Is that a word? Or is that can you say that? Just YouTube it. look for, he did a number of talks about the book. If you type in Becoming Superman, Straczynski, you'll come up on some really, not actually, those videos don't have many views, but they're really, really interesting because he tells his own personal version of the book in a way. And at the same time, of course, it's promoting the book, so it won't spoil everything. But it's great. I love it, and it makes me want to go back and watch more of Babylon 5 because I've never finished the series, I have to admit, to my shame. But it's really, really worth your while. So that would be my tip for this week. It's called Raising Superman, and it's written by Michael Straczynski. And you can get both the book and the audiobook on the Amazon store. And if you go and do that, why not go to Trio.com first and click on that Amazon link. That way, it's an easy way to support the work that I do. And now it is time to talk about sci-fi.
I see aliens. Little aliens from outer space.
And how are things in outer Plutonia?
How many times have I told you not to wear your space boots in the house?
Go to shape I'm in, you can donate my body to science fiction.
Get your suit on! We need you!
And if you allow me, I would like to expand this segment not just to the world of aliens and spaceships, but also to the world of fantasy and creatures that only exist in our imagination or in the imagination of these great fantasy writers. Because the first topic I want to mention briefly, just to remind ourselves that this is coming and this is something that we are looking forward to, The Lord of the Rings on Amazon Prime. As you know, Amazon has bought the rights to do a television series of 5 seasons, at least 5 seasons, that takes place in the Second Age in Middle-earth. And so this is a time way before, thousands of years before the events in The Lord of the Rings. And it will tell us about Sauron at that time. There are a lot of actually characters that we know from The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. They're already alive. Think of, for instance, now names escape me. Why I was on a roll. The character that they skipped from in The Lord of the Rings, the doop-de-doo. Oh, goodness gracious! Now I need to Google this. It's in my history. I just looked it up. There was a whole list of characters that we may actually see in this series. They could do that. Oh dear, how does this history thing works? I just installed the final version of Catalina, and now it's in this dark mode, and it's disorienting because everything looks so different from what I'm used to. So here's an article. So what do we know about the Lord of the Rings series? We know that it will take place in the Second Age, which spans 3,500 years. And it ends with the first downfall of Sauron. Of course, he will return as the Eye of Sauron in The Lord of the Rings. Thank you, chat room. Tom Bombadil and Galadriel. Those are the two that I was trying. Tom Bombadil, of course, that was so sad that we didn't get to see him in The Lord of the Rings because he's a very important character in the overall mythology of Middle-earth. So, and since we haven't seen him, they can basically depict him any way they want. So they can totally bring that back. Elrond. Goldberry, that's the wife of Tom Bombadil. They can totally use characters that were already alive. They have also been granted the creative license, to expand upon the things that Tolkien wrote, as long as it doesn't contradict anything in the books. But that gives you a lot of leeway. They're already casting this series, and they are scouting, and that is what makes me so excited. They're going back to New Zealand, and they're currently scouting locations to film this series, going to be, the first season is going to be, I think, 20 or 22 episodes. So we're not talking like what we currently have a lot is 10 episodes per season, 11, 12. No, this is going to be a 22 filmic episodes filmed in New Zealand. This is going to be epic, and I can't be more excited about it. And in fact, earlier on in this episode, I talked about the dreams that I have. What would you, if anything would be possible, what would I most love to do? I would love to go back to New Zealand and film a documentary about Middle Earth and its origins in the Catholic thinking of Tolkien. I want to go to Scotland and England and film a documentary about the background of the Harry Potter series. I want to film a documentary about the inspiration for Star Wars and about the future of Star Wars, but also about the foundations of Star Wars mythology and about all these religious themes that are integrated into the story and without which Star Wars wouldn't be Star Wars. I'm currently watching the Clone Wars. And you know what strikes me? I'm still in the first few seasons. What strikes me is what the weakness of the Clone Wars is all the fighting. The tons of scenes with the battle droids. Roger, Roger. And the Jedi that show up and do sword fighting and deflect laser beams and stuff. And the chases in space. And you know why that doesn't work for me? Because that has always been additional stuff. That's just to fluff it up a little bit and make it science fiction. But what truly makes Star Wars is the mythology, is the Force. It's all this, this big battle between good and evil. The mysteries also. There's a lot of mystery in Star Wars. And that is what makes it so good. There's nothing worse, I think, for the future of Star Wars than to explain away the Force, be it by midichlorians or by the wills, and what I kind of ranted about last time. This draft that George Lucas wrote for the sequels that ultimately wasn't used by Disney. But I think you're breaking the mystery, and the mystery as such is essential for Star Wars storytelling. If you explain away everything, then there is nothing to look into. Whereas if you keep the mystery around of what is the Force, where does it come from? How is it possible that the Force does this or that? That's what gives you story content. What does the Force do with people and why? And how do people react to the Force? That is what makes Star Wars so fascinating. And the moment that you take that away and you reduce Star Wars to a rehash of stuff that we've already seen, the Death Star chase sequence, laser fights, battle droids. That's where it gets bland and boring. And it's like, been there, done that. Move on. And I have to say, the more I advance in Clone Wars, the more they seem to discover that, and they go back to what makes Star Wars Star Wars. It's about the characters. It's about the Force. It's about Anakin training his pupil. It's about Obi-Wan trying to train Anakin. It's about Anakin's betrayal of his state as a Jedi. It's about heroism, self-sacrifice. Those are the themes, and those are all themes straight from the great religious stories in our culture, in our global culture. If you ask me, what is your biggest dream? Make a documentary about that. Because we've seen so many documentaries about the fans, about the external stuff in Star Wars, but what truly is interesting and what I think I can add value to is to help us understand what makes these stories tick. But then, of course, in order to realize your dream, you need to have room and space and means to do that. And that is currently what I'm working on with our board, our Trio board. Yesterday we had a meeting. And we were just going through the different things that we do. So we have this Catholic channel that we built in the Netherlands, and that is set up without me, as much as possible without me. I do have a small role, and it's still very, in its initial beginning. So, but my role is to make sure that can be a standalone production standalone channel. I provide the ideas, but I don't do the work. The second big thing that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is the television job. And the television job for me is my training grounds. That's where I learned how to make documentaries. That's where I learned how to interview people, how to film. But it is time to move away from investing my best qualities into that television series and move it to the third area of work for me. And that is what I'm currently doing. It's this international work. It's the work that I do for a global audience. Right now, I'm streaming this live in the morning on YouTube, and the chat is filled with people from all over the globe. From Poland, from Germany, from Asia, from Australia, New Zealand, from the United States. I don't know why people are awake at this time of the night in the US, because I'm recording this in the morning, but they're there. And that audience, I think, that is where the biggest growth is possible, because it's a worldwide audience. And that is where I've always been working before I started working in the world of television. And it was always on the fringes of this, the world of geeks and storytelling and fantasy and science fiction and the Bible, religion, philosophy. That is where my strength is. That's where my passion is. And that's where you can tell the greatest stories. But the board yesterday said, well, you can't do all these three things at once. So that Catholic channel, well, that's already in progress. We're working on taking that out of your hands, and that's looking really good. The television channel, however, doesn't mean you have to stop doing what you do. But you now have so much experience that you can simplify that. And one of the things that I've been doing this past season is focusing much more on portraits. Instead of trying to convey information or do these elaborate travel episodes, I focus on one person. So not this week, but next week, there's a two-parter about a hermit, a Dutch priest who traded his parish in the Netherlands, which was really a great parish. He loved working there, but he received the call to go to France and to live for the rest of his life as a hermit. And I stayed with him for 2 days, and the entire 2 episodes are focused on him. It's a portrait of his life there, his vocation, the struggles, and it's filmed in the beautiful environment of the French countryside. His chapel is in the middle of the vineyards, but none of that really matters. That's just decoration, just like the laser sword fighting in Star Wars. But what truly matters is him, his character, his vocation, his story. So it's very much interview based, and I've discovered that is actually much easier to produce. And it helps me because it's simplifying, and I don't try to cram in just hours and hours and hours of footage. It also, as an interviewer, enables me to go much deeper than I did before. And so the board tells me, why don't you make that your strength? Focus on these portraits, make them simpler to film and to edit. And what you gain in terms of what you save, in terms of, for instance, editing costs and time, that's even more important and more valuable. Pick one of those big documentaries that you want to make and make that documentary on the quality level of Netflix. Make it in 4K, use drones, make it as good as possible, but save your best quality for your biggest audience. And that is your international audience, and it's not the television audience. And so dare to dream. That's literally what the board told me yesterday. Dare to dream. And I think I like that. I think I want to do that. I think I'm going to do that because that is what is driving me. That gives me a drive to go even beyond what I can do right now and to share that with you and with the world. That's what I'm called to do, and that's what I'm going to do. That's it for this episode of my weekly show. I will keep you up to date on my travels in Scotland and Rome. Next week, we may be in Scotland for this show. I'll see you next week. God bless. And that's a wrap, at least for this. Now I'm going to quickly record the after show. Hey, it's Father Roderick, and this is the after show. And if you're listening to this, you're either watching the live show on YouTube, but that's always a very small group that is awake when I'm streaming, because of course I'm in European time, and most of my international audience is in different time zones. Or, and that's probably the case for most of you, you're a patron and you're supporting me with your monthly donation, and it really helps. As usual, when I'm streaming live, there are always people with questions and comments, and I just go through the talking points that I get from my audience, and maybe you have been part of that streaming audience. So I always like that interaction. And today I was very surprised, recording this in the morning. Well, right now it's noon, so I almost have to go out and film my Vatican News segment for my Dutch channel. But there are actually surprisingly... No, it's surprising that there are so many Americans in the chat, because it's really in the middle of the night there, early morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. So we've Margot, for instance, from Tacoma Park, just outside D.C., and it must be, what time is it? That's minus 7 hours, so it's 5 o'clock in the morning. So either these people have not gone to bed yet, or they're up super early. There's a movie review guy who wants to know, what is the best film of all time? And that's a very difficult question. There are movies, of course, that made a huge impact on me, Star Wars being perhaps the most prominent one. But is Star Wars the best movie? I don't know. And I honestly couldn't answer that question, because what I currently enjoy or think of as the best movie may be totally different from a year ago, because I'm different. And it's like the Bible. Sometimes, what is the best gospel? What is the best story that Jesus tells? What's the best parable? Well, today it would be this. Tomorrow it's probably going to be something different, because it depends. Stories resonate because you relate to them in a certain way. And what I'm going through now in my life is different from a year ago. And so different stories may resonate with me. So I'm always, when people ask me that question, I would say, well, it's not a very interesting question, because it's going to be different for all of us. And it's much more interesting right now. What do you consider right now as the movie that is most dear to you, and why? And I couldn't even answer that question. Right now, if I have to say, I'd say, what is touching you the most right now? It's the series on Netflix, Raising Dion, because it's heartwarming and it tells a story about a mom trying to raise her kid with special gifts, special abilities. But that may have been just as much a story about a mom trying to raise a kid with very special disabilities. Same story, but it's about this heartwarming bond between a mom who has lost her husband and trying to raise this kid alone. Chirk wants to know, when do you finally show us your Lego collection? And I have to say, I've been struggling to find time to do that. I've not done much Lego building in the evenings, and that's mostly because I'm still recovering from my infection. And oftentimes in the evening, I'm wiped out because I've started to work again. But it is still asking more of me than usual. But it's coming. I will show you what I've built so far. Kolekoko says, I can't wait to hear your Joker review. I actually found it edifying and made me want to pray for those with mental illnesses. Yeah, I will see it eventually. I'm just not sure when, because I will be in Scotland tomorrow. And then immediately afterwards, I will be in Italy. But I think it's so successful right now at the box office that I'm pretty sure that we'll still be in theaters when I get back. Majek says, Dzień dobry. So that is Polish for hello or good day. And why so serious is from Germany, but there's not really a question there. Margot says the lack. We talked about healthcare because in the series of Raising Dion, you kind of see this situation where the kid has asthma, the mom loses her job and then thereby also loses health coverage, which is always kind of, I have to wrap my brain around that, because in my country, health coverage is never linked to a job. It's something that you have because you pay for that on a yearly basis. Everybody does. It's compulsory. But we're always covered no matter what happens. And then you can have extra coverage for dental, for, glasses and that sort of stuff. But everyone has a basic insurance. So there's never this risk that if I, am in a life-threatening situation that I won't be helped because I'm not insured. Margot writes, the lack of universal health care in the U.S. almost killed me this summer. My appendix ruptured 2 weeks before my health insurance from my new job kicked in. Unsurprisingly, and that's a life-threatening, the appendix, you can die from that within a day. Margot continues, unsurprisingly, I was sicker than I had ever been in my life. When I was able to seek medical care, I was hospitalized for 6 days and went home and to work with tubes to drain the infection. I had walked around with more than a liter of infectious material in my abdomen for 2 weeks. It's only thanks to God's grace and a crazy strong immune system that I'm even alive today. That is an incredible story. I don't know how you did that. You could have died. And it's like, just because you didn't have a job with healthcare. I mean, to me, that sounds like I wouldn't want to live in that country. Honestly, I really wouldn't want to live in a country where that could happen to me. Now, I know that not everyone has the option to move, but again, I talked about gratitude in my weekly episode, and for me, that is again one of these stories like this make me realize how thankful I am for the health system, and it's not perfect, and there are downsides to it as well. But at least when I got ill 2 weeks ago, and I was in a not really life-threatening situation, but it could have turned into a life-threatening situation. There was not a doubt in my mind that I had to go to the hospital, and they moved me to the intensive care or the emergency care. And I know that as soon as you're transferred to emergency care, that is very costly. I wouldn't be able to pay for that. But I have like a small amount that I pay in case I do use medical care during the year. That's about $350 or something like that. And all the rest is covered by the insurance. So it didn't even cross my mind that, but if I weren't insured, man, I would have said, no, don't send me to emergency care. I can't afford that. And who knows what would have happened. Margot continues, this also means I can seriously relate to your story about recovering from infection. Do as much as you feel able to, but be patient with the process. You will be back to normal soon. Well, thank you, Margot. I kind of blame myself for going back to work this early. Everyone in my environment, the doctor, the urologist, they've all said to me, this is going to take a couple of weeks before you can go back to work. And yet, I'm already here for 2 weeks now. And I'm going to Scotland, and I'm going to Italy. It's a bit reckless. But it is truly because, for me, it is hard work to not work. For me, it is difficult to decide this evening I'm not going to stream Lego. That sounds ridiculous, but it's truly, I have this drive that I want to connect with my audience. I need to be on YouTube because, well, everybody expects me to be. And I have so much trouble toning it down and taking it easy because I have this maybe it's another, a certain type of an addiction to work. That can also be maybe because I don't want to face myself not being useful. It's a question that I ask myself. And I hope that I didn't make the wrong decision. It's kind of risky to go and do all this television work right now. But it's too late. I've already booked a ferry. Anyway, pray for me. Zombie49, Dzień dobry. I just came here to say that this is one of the channels that I enjoy on YouTube. Even as an atheist, I love to hear you talking, Father. Well, I'm honored, Zombie49, and I hope you enjoy my chatter and always feel welcome. I don't care if you're a Catholic or an atheist or a Buddhist or an alien from Mars. I just want people to have a great time and feel that they are in a warm community here. Michiel is there, and Frank the Tank is there. That's a great screen name. Jagazi is there. Adam, I was in the weekly show, I was talking about how much my dad loved Jacques Tati, who's a French comedian, a filmmaker who made French comedies, which are kind of not for everyone, but my dad loved it. And then Adam writes, I was thinking about Jacques Tati yesterday. My mother loved him. So yeah, it's I don't think they're online anywhere or on any streaming platform, but if you get the chance to sample one of those movies, it's worth just to if only to discover that little, time period it was still the Black and Time era in France, where comedies were so influential. Everybody knew Jacques Tati in France, and then in a way, the later comedians from France are part of that legacy of Jacques Tati. He kind of created a format for French comedy, which a guy like Louis de Funès only kind of worked on the shoulders of Jacques Tati and expanded upon that. We also talked about Babylon 5, and Bill in the chat says, I used to have all the Babylon 5 DVDs, including Legend of the Rangers and The Crusade. I too have that. I just bought a box set. It's very cheap right now on Amazon. I think it's just $50 or something like that. And but I think it's also available on Hulu, or it's definitely in the US, it's on one of those streaming platforms. But the advantage of the DVDs is there's a lot of extras on it. It's all, fortunately, only in DVD SD quality, and so far they've not been able to remaster it like they did with Star Trek, just because most of the special effects were never rendered in HD and cannot be re-rendered because the models are not there anymore. So transferring everything to HD would be impossible. The only small hope that I have is this machine learning. I've seen some stunning examples of upscaling techniques that use the latest technology in artificial intelligence, where basically the computer program creates detail based on machine learning. And it's still in very early stages, probably not good enough to upscale something like Babylon 5, but who knows where this technology will go. If Google can teach an algorithm to turn black and white photos into very believable color photos, I think we're only a couple of years away from upscalers that can create, almost like use an artistic element in upscaling material, old material that was shot in very low resolution. I can already do that with very low resolution digital photos that I took during my study time in Rome. I had one of those very early digital cameras, photo cameras. It's super low resolution, full of grain, and there are some algorithms that can enhance the quality, take the grain away, and it looks, well, it doesn't look like a modern photo, but it looks 100 times better than the original in low resolution. So who knows? Let's see what else was talked about in the chat. Have you heard about the BBC War of the World series, the 3-part adaptation? I've seen a trailer of that, and it looks good. I'm looking forward to it. Steph wants to know, how do you feel about gay people? Sorry about the controversial question. Never apologize for your questions. It is a very valid question, and a question that I've answered many times in the past already. Briefly, of course, way too short, this answer, but the Catholic Church looks at people not determined by their sexuality. First of all, you're a child of God, and you have an intrinsic worth and value and dignity. And the Catholic Church has a very clear doctrine about sexuality, which says it is only for married couples. It is for within marriage. And so that's actually attaching a very high value to sexuality. It's something that the Church values very much, but it is also a force that can also be very destructive. Look at all the abuse, and it can also be self-destructive in a way. Look at the porn addiction that many people suffer from. And so that is why if you really try to go beyond kind of the superficial what you've heard about what the Catholic Church says, if you dive into what are the reasons for this the sexual how do you say that, the morality, the ethics of the Catholic Church, you'll discover that there's actually it's all focused on the value of both every single person, no matter what your orientation is or who you are. God considers you as his child, and that should always come first. And then also the value that it attaches to sexuality and to the life-giving strength, forces in sexuality. So makes a lot of sense, but it's also something that you really need to dive into to fully understand. But always try to go beyond what the media, how the media sometimes distorts kind of the message. But it's worth investing in. All right, what else have we got in the chat room? The Rise of Skywalker trailer comes out October the 21st. Oh boy, is that true? That's next week. I'll be in Rome. Uh-oh. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Steph says the director of the Lord of the Rings show is legit. It's my grandpa's neighbor. Oh, wow. Tell me more. Michael shares my criticism of the battle droids in Clone Wars. He says it's way too often used as just as comic relief. Yeah, true. I don't read any Star Wars spoilers, so I'm going to skip all the comments about that. And there's some more comments just about Star Wars. But hey, I need to start wrapping things up because I've been talking for 15 minutes already. And I need to go and do my Vatican news item. And I still need to prepare that. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being a supporter and a patron. And if you're not a patron and you're watching this on YouTube and you want to support me as well, just go take a look at patreon.com/Father Roderick for more information. I'll talk to you next week, probably from Scotland or from Rome or both. Take care. Alrighty. Hey, thanks for joining the chat. Sorry I couldn't answer all your questions and comments, but it's a busy day. So we'll talk later, and I'll be back. Okay. There we go. Bye.